Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U. And today we're going to talk about how to write scary as hell horror scenes. Now, I don't know about you, but I just watched the Amanda Bear Trap scene again. And it's truly a terrifying scene. It was written incredibly well. And it's part of what caused a couple of totally unknown writers to become franchise writers and become somebody that the entire industry wanted to work with. So it's amazing what is possible for you. And let's just take a look at this. Why do we love horror? Now I'm going to ask it from a different perspective. Most people would look at this question and say, well, because it's scary, because it's engaging emotionally, just because I do. But I want to look at it from a business perspective, from a TV film industry perspective. And here's the first place. Producers love horror because it can be low budget with tremendous upside. And I'll show you a couple of those projects in just a moment so you can see what this is like. But if a producer looks at your script and they go, wow, first, I can do this, it fits whatever budget I have. And second, this one has the chance to break out. They're going to go out of their way to work with you. And that's truly possible. Well, why do writers love horror? And I'm talking about the ones who are already in the industry that have had success. It's because it was the easiest genre there was to break in. The movies I'm about to show you here, they're all great horror. They were created by new writers to the industry. They all came from basically nowhere. So let's look at a couple of those. Paranormal Activity. This one was, the budget on it was $15,000. Unbelievable. But they had a great idea and they'd figured out how to do it in a contained way that they could just use basically video cameras on. The box office on it was 193 million. That's just astounding. And what that meant was, the people who worked on that project are in pretty good financial condition nowadays. This one, Blair Witch. I actually, I met the vice president of Artisan, the distributor who bought Blair Witch. I interviewed him at Sundance, uh, right after they made the deal. Like they had made the deal on Tuesday, they announced it on Friday. I interviewed him on Saturday. And it was an interesting thing because the night before, there was a 4-person panel up in front of everybody at Sundance. One of them was the VP from Artisan, and the others were from major studios. Every question from the audience went to the major studio guys. The next day, when this movie came out, and it was like just an instant hit, the next day, everybody wanted to talk to the Artisan guy. But when I interviewed him, there were only about 10 people in the room because I interviewed him before the movie hit, and got to hear the story. It was actually an amazing story. But these guys, the two people who created this, their budget was $60,000. Box office 248 million, and they got a 3-picture deal from Artisan. So they knew that Artisan knew it was going to be such a big hit. It was they said they were willing to make almost any deal with the guys at that point. Just amazing. Here's another one. You guys know it. Saw. Saw, again, came from nowhere, basically. It actually came from some writers in Australia. The budget on it ended up being, it depends on where you look. Some places say 1 million, some say 1.2 million. The box office on that one was 103 million. So it basically made back 100 times its money. Just amazing. But these guys ended up going on to huge careers. The one who was the writer director on it has made 23 movies since then. The other one has been part of about 4 different franchises. Huge amount of success, but Saw itself has been a $1.1 billion franchise. And then here's this other one, Friday the 13th. I know Sean Cunningham, the producer of Friday the 13th. But again, this one, 550,000 was the budget. It made back 59,000. So it made back 10 times its money on that. Actually, no, it was more than that. It was. And it ended up being a franchise that they've had 12 movies already made. Friday the 13th movie has been in the works for a while now. And they had a TV series made out of it. Unbelievable. So today we're going to talk about scary as hell horror scenes, which are an important part of a great horror movie. And let me just say before we go into this, for anybody who is thinking about writing drama with horror elements, my advice to you would be write a real horror movie. And the reason why is because drama with horror elements, they can't sell it to a drama audience because it has horror in it, and they can't sell it to a horror audience because it's not a real horror movie. It only has horror elements. So if you're going to do this, I'd say just be clean. Just write a great horror movie. Call it horror, send it out, make your deal, create the success that you want. Because the success we just talked about, while it just seems crazy and out there, that was 4 out of about 30 stories of writers who ended up breaking in horror and have had big careers. It is absolutely possible for you to do that. And this is a start on it. This is a big thing. You need 4 to 6 deeply scary horror scenes. And by the way, you'll have some other horror scenes, but the truth is most of the rest of the movie is us getting to know the characters so that we care about them when they go through these kinds of things. And in many cases, like the Amanda one, basically set up everything that was coming after that. But it was a scene that took us to a place we had never been in horror. So each of these scary as hell horror scenes are an emotional journey. It's not just, you just flash a bunch of scary stuff in front of people. Each of them has an arc. The scene has an arc, and each of them is artfully written. Like the one that we just saw, the Amanda one, I'll show it to you in just a moment how it went. Incredible writing, absolutely incredible. So let's jump into it. How do you do this? You start with a horror situation. So the Amanda reverse bear trap scene, there's a category, there's a situation, and there's the urgency in the situation. So it started her category, and this is, we've divided this into a series of categories so you can create this so fast. Her category, she's isolated and tormented. The situation, she has a trap on her head, and the key is in the belly of the cellmate. The urgency, she has 1 minute before the trap kills her. Putting these 3 things together makes a huge difference. If this would have been done in a place where she wasn't isolated and she had 3 or 4 people working on it, it'd be a very different kind of scene. If the key wasn't in the belly of the cellmate, you'll see later on, there's certain emotions that wouldn't have shown up. And the 1 minute makes it so everybody is worried about her times 10. Now, what's the emotional arc? This is the range of the scene from the beginning to the end. It starts at one emotion, right? At a light emotion, and it goes to an extreme emotion. And that's what you want when you're doing these scary as hell scenes. You want to leave people breathless. You want to be so on the edge of their seat, so nervous. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. You know, I used to not like horror that much, but when I started meeting horror fans, the people who love horror, they're looking for that kind of emotional arc. It could be from anxiety to shock, could be from suspense to panic, could be from dread to hysteria. The Amanda scene we just saw was from surprise, right? And I'm talking about the moment she opened her eyes and realized where she was, from surprise to full out hysteria. So you then sequence the emotions. So you're asking what emotions occur in between the beginning and the ending. If we're starting in one place, we're going to end in another. What are the emotions that show up? And they could be apprehension. These are all horror emotions. Apprehension, surprise, shock, fear, suspense, dread, anguish, panic, horror, and hysteria. Now, if you ask yourself, and we did this when we were developing the program that I'll talk with you about in just a little bit, we went through and looked at every one of these emotions, and we said, first, how do we define them? How do we know the difference between apprehension and anguish? You know, and by the way, how do you know the difference between apprehension and surprise? How do we define these? So we created definitions to them that were simple and to the point. And then we went back and said, how do we actually design a process that is a single sentence? Like, for instance, anguish. Do you know how to create anguish? And for some people, you may not even have thought of anguish as being a horror emotion, but it's in pretty much every horror movie at one point. And this one's pretty big if you understand it. A lot of people don't understand what it is or how to create it. We've got one sentence. I've got an explanation, a one sentence definition, and one sentence exactly how to create it. So you sequence these emotions, and I'll show you those in just a moment. We're going to look at the exact emotions that were in the Amanda scene. You sequence these emotions in a way that has the audience naturally flow through them and end up where you want them, right? And that's important. It's not just, oh, the character experiences it, therefore the audience experiences it. I watched a bad indie horror movie where they had characters in hysteria constantly, and by the end, the audience was laughing because it made no sense. Why is this character in hysteria again and again and again without going through any kind of buildup to it? You know, it was terrible. So it needs to be done right. Then what you do is you give them a physical, or excuse me, you give each motion a physical representation so that we see it and we feel it. And, you know, that's an easy way to do this. You list the emotions in a sequence. Again, you're going to see what I'm going to do with that in a moment. And you brainstorm, what is a physical way it could show up? What's the physical side of it? What are we going to see on the screen? So you'll see each emotion in the Amanda scene has a strong physical representation. That makes a huge difference for the audience. Now, at that point, then you add in scares, dilemmas, and releases. So scares happen when something unknown startles you, right? And this could go anything from the cat suddenly jumping out at you kind of thing to somebody pulling a knife or something. Dilemmas, you're requiring a character to make a choice between two terrible outcomes. And this, obviously, a dilemma in a horror movie is different than a dilemma in a rom-com movie. In a rom-com movie, there are probably two emotional outcomes, or two men or two women or whatever. They're trying to decide what they're going to do. In a horror movie, a dilemma is usually the most painful thing that character is going to experience from an emotional perspective. Releases happen when we realize that everything is all right. Oh. And many times when somebody's doing a great job of writing this, releases can be used to have the audience feel all right for a moment and then scare them even worse. So that they're very valuable tools. Let's now look at Amanda, this poor lady. First, I want to say it was written by Leigh Whannell and James Wan. Both of these guys came from Australia. They tried to sell it down there, couldn't get anyone to say yes. Came up to Los Angeles, did some meetings, and one of the producers just read one of these scenes and went, "Oh my God, this is astounding." I don't know if this was the scene that he read in the beginning, but it changed everything for these writers. So let's go through it. For each one, I'm going to give you a scene description and then the emotion that was present. It starts at the police station. Lawrence is asked to interview, or is asked to watch the interview with Amanda. She's the only surviving victim of Jigsaw. Here we feel sympathy for Amanda and some curiosity. Then, now we wake up in the abandoned building. We see Amanda there strapped to the chair. She wakes up. Her head is covered by this bear trap, right? We have some suspense and fear. We don't know what's going to happen at this point. A monitor turns on. Jigsaw's creepy doll explains the rules of the game. If she doesn't find the key in time from the stomach of her dead belly, or excuse me, her dead cellmate, her jaw will be ripped open. Here now we have apprehension and suspense. She hasn't seen the cellmate over there. She doesn't know anything that's happening. She knows, though, this is a really bad situation, and she's being told that if she doesn't do it, this terrible thing's going to happen to her. The video shows the trap explode. At that point, she feels terror, and so do we. Amanda utterly freaks out, trying to get away from the chair. Now we're in pure panic. Getting out of the chair, finally, it starts the reverse trap or it starts the timer on the trap. And at this point, we have suspense and panic combined. We now have a countdown. We're worried. If she doesn't get it in time, it's going to be over for her. Amanda says, "And then I saw the body." And we see her approaching the man laying on the ground. Here we have dread. So she sobs, realizing what she has to do. She still has this bear trap on her head, right? So now we have anguish. We're actually feeling anguish for this character. Then she picks up the tiny knife. She's about to start doing it. Her timer is running at that point. We have serious suspense. The man wakes up. He's alive. Oh my God. That was, by the way, that was really smart of them. He stares helplessly at her. Now she's in this emotional dilemma. It's her life or his. What is she going to do in that situation? She raises the knife, screams as she starts stabbing him over and over. Here we have hysteria. She's gone almost completely crazy. As an audience, we're feeling what that's like. She fishes through the bloody guts, ends up finding the key, or at least she's looking for them. This is disgust. Now, notice all these emotions that are coming in, by the way. She finally gets the trap off just a second before it triggers. She screams and sobs. We have a release here. The light comes on, the creepy doll comes in. He says, "Congratulations, you're still alive. Most people are so ungrateful to be alive, but not you, not anymore." This is our moral message. And horror often has some type of moral message. At the police station, Amanda says, "He helped me." This is the moral meaning. Now, by the way, this is really interesting. You know, she just killed somebody and barely survived like a horrible death. And her feelings are she helped him or he helped her. That's pretty amazing. And then finally, watching the interview, Lawrence is horrified. This sets up Lawrence cutting off his own foot. Now, if you look at that, these emotions were sequenced in a way so the audience was not only constantly experiencing them, but they were going from one emotion to the next, to the next, to the next. You know, first time I saw that scene, I really, truly, I was borderline traumatized. But it's incredible what the writers did on this and what they accomplished. And this kind of thing is possible for anyone here. That's what we're doing here. So, you know, what you've just seen is an example of great horror. And that's a lot of times I see horror scenes that are written that are like, sometimes I see tame horror scenes. Sometimes I see scenes that just jump to something scary, but now it's monotonous. Now we're just seeing the same thing all the way across the whole scene. This was great horror. It was great horror because the writers used higher level skills. And I don't know how many times they had to rewrite that, what they had to go through, but I'm going to tell you, it's very possible for you to be able to write at that level and to be able to create horror scenes that producers absolutely love and that audiences can't stop talking about. So I'd like to invite you to join us in the upcoming horror class. This, for those of you who truly want to be great at horror, what this does is it takes it beyond just what you can get from experiencing watching a horror movie or reading the script. We're going to give you the actual tools that make these kind of horror scenes happen. The program's coming up. It's going to be on October 7th is when it's starting. I will give you guys a special in a couple of minutes for those of you who really want to do this. Let me just walk you through the lessons. It starts by making sure that you have a great concept and you're delivering on the conventions of horror. And this is where, again, the people who are writing drama with horror elements aren't delivering on the conventions of horror. So this in itself may change things for you. But by the way, it's also what an audience needs and it's what producers expect. We then go to creating your monster. Who's your monster? In that case, it was Jigsaw. And how do you build the primal fears around your whole story? So if your story is built on the primal fears, these are the things that people can't talk their way out of. They're the emotions that when they happen, they either shut people down, they send them into fight, flight, or freeze, right? It's like, this is the stuff that people have been afraid of for their whole life. So why not build your horror movie around it? You'll then work to create your survivors and victims. And in horror movies, there's really only three different kinds of characters. There's the monster, you know, or the villain, whichever you choose on that, the survivors and the victims. That's it. But they play an important role. From that point, it's about building your plot, and we will create your plot in 4 different ways so that it really is a horror script, not a drama with horror elements. You'll start out by creating your horror situations track. Where are the big horror scenes going to be across your story? Then your character death track. And there are some people who say, well, deaths happen in a horror movie for no reason. I'm going to tell you, even when there's no reason, the writer has a reason. So you are going to go through and look to see, where does this happen, when, how, and which character is dying first and which ones die after that. You'll sequence them so that you know exactly, and they make sense for what you're doing. Then your monster reveal track, right? When do we see the monster? Even if you looked at this scene, we saw the doll. First on the video, we only saw part of the doll. Then we saw him come in at the very end on his little bicycle, but that's not actually the real monster. That's just our first moments of seeing that kind of thing. The real monster is the Jigsaw Killer. Then your character journey track. Even if you have a character who dies in the first scene, there's a journey for that character. Think of the movie Scream, where we had Drew Barrymore. She's inside her house or her apartment, having a nice night. I think she's cooking something, and then the phone rings. And that leads to her death that happens about 2-3 minutes later. Now, even though that's what's happening, we watch her journey. She goes through an actual journey, and she starts with being, completely fine and happy and having fun with the guy on the phone, all the way to the very end where you know what happens. But even if a character dies in your opening scene, there's still a journey, and you want to get the audience engaged in that journey. Then it's about the emotions, and you'll see we have 3 days of the emotions. Each day we're going to work with 3 or 4 emotions, and in that you will learn exactly what does anguish mean? What's the real definition that you can use as a writer to be able to create, and how do you create it? And again, we'll give you a 1-sentence explanation for each of these that gets right to the heart of it. It took us 2 months to create this. And I'm talking a full development team. Every writer on there had horror movies produced. Took us 2 months to figure this out. This will change how you write, and it will give your horror movies so much more emotion. Then the 20 scares and creepy moments. You probably know most of the scares, but I'm giving you 20 so that you don't get stuck on the same kind over and over and over again. From there, basically what we did today, except you'll get a full explanation of how to do it. Today, I gave you a taste of how to create scary as hell horror scenes. And then how do you turn up the heat on this story so that people can't stop thinking about it? And how do you keep it low budget if you choose, and marketable, which is incredibly important. Now, the class is starting again on October 7th. The price is $199. The special, and this is the first 10 writers, you can get in for $99. After that, after 10, it'll go up to $129, then it'll go up to $149, and finally it'll end up at $199. So all you got to do, just write this link down, bit.ly, bit.ly/horror sign up. No spaces, no caps, no dashes. Again, it's bit.ly, write down, bit.ly/horror sign up. Put that in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and you'll start this adventure to you writing an incredible horror movie. By the way, all those other writers that we saw that made it had to do this all on trial and error. They spent years working on those scripts. They spent a massive amount of time trying to figure this stuff out. I promise you, in 30 days, you will know as much as they know, and you will be able to create something pretty amazing. Do your best with this, and you never know what's possible. So our job is to do everything we can to help you guys get to the point where you're incredible at your writing. I promise you, this program will be an absolutely amazing experience for you if you've been wanting to write a great horror script. And if you've written horror scripts before and haven't yet had them produced, then that means there's something in here that you just didn't know, that as soon as you learn it, will change everything for you. That's what this whole thing is about. So if what you want to do is to be able to create an amazing horror script, do well in contest and possibly get it produced, and maybe for some of you, you might end up being one of those people that we talk about from now on who had one of those breakout movies that changed your life completely. All of that is possible if you know what you're doing and you've mastered these skills. So come join us for the class. I promise you're going to absolutely love what you learn during this program. It is an astounding program. With that, this is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, wishing you the absolute best, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with your horror projects. Good talking with you all. Bye-bye, everyone.